Now, while looking at my cluster, specifically the nodes of my AWS Test 1 cluster, I realized that the version of K0s is slightly older than the current version. We have 131.2 installed, while 131.3 is installed. Let's update that together. In order to do this, we first need a new cluster template. If I output all the cluster templates that cordont currently knows about, we see the two that we use to create our clusters initially, the AWS standalone control plane 001 and the Azure standalone control plane 001. These versions have this version for the nodes, the control planes inside of them. What we can do now is create a new template that references a new version. I've already done this. It's just a Helm chart with a couple of variables. And I push them into my Helm chart repository. So I'm going to tell my cordont about this, and I create a new cluster template and cluster template chain to create this. And if I show all the cluster templates now, I can see we have now an AWS standalone 00 true, which is also valid. So cordont already validated this template for us. Now, because cordont has all the different cluster templates under control, it can actually tell me now that there's an update available. So it tells me that for the cluster AWS Test 1, there's an update for demo AWS standalone control plane 002, and the same also for AWS Test 2 available. So let's upgrade them. All I have to do now is just reference the new template. So I'm going to do this with this simple script, and you can see the changes that have just happened. So the cluster deployment object that we initially created, all I change now is the template from demo AWS standalone 001 to demo AWS standalone 002. And what we can do with that now, I can actually see what's happening on my cluster. So if I output all the different clusters for my system and specifically look for my AWS Test 1, we can see that AWS Test 1 is now being upgraded automatically to v131.3. We can also connect to the cluster itself and see the nodes. So I'm connecting here with the kubeconfig of this cluster, and I show all the different nodes with a watch command. And we will see now already the control plane has been updated to 131.3. And as we're waiting, we see now the nodes themselves are getting cordoned and drained. And then new nodes are going to come up, which we see here. This JKD95 with the v131.3 is already coming up. So what's happening now is cordont tells the cluster API, or CAPI, the control systems there, to upgrade this cluster. This system will now talk to the infrastructure provider, which is AWS in this case, to create completely new infrastructure nodes or EC2 nodes, bring them up with the correct AMI and also install the correct K0s version in it, and then register them at the cluster, while the cluster itself is properly cordoned and drained to ensure that no applications, aka no pods or no services, are ever down or have any violations of PDBs and other systems of Kubernetes. And we can see a couple of seconds later, we have the first node. This one is now ready. It has 131.2. And we can see now an older node is now being scheduled. This schedule is being disabled. In a couple of seconds, we will also see that this node is fully back and our whole cluster is upgraded to v131.3.